This study that I was involved in as a doctoral student at the University of Connecticut was performed to directly compare the impact of two isocaloric protein sources differing in protein quality on body composition responses to resistance training. In this study, we took young, untrained adults and had them supplement daily with isocaloric whey protein, soy protein, or a carbohydrate control beverage for 9 months. All subjects performed supervised progressive whole body resistance training for 9 months. They exercised 3 days per week and had to complete a total of 96 individual workouts to be included in the analysis. And on their training days, these supplements were ingested immediately post-exercise, whereas on non-training days, they were consumed typically in the morning with breakfast. So we examined the impact of whey protein compared to soy protein, and we know that whey protein contains a higher concentration of the essential amino acids, resulting in a pronounced increase in muscle protein synthesis. In this study, a higher daily protein intake was encouraged in order to support protein synthesis with resistance training. So we standardized the dietary protein intake that was 25 to 50% greater than the RDA. This corresponded to 1.0 to 1.2 grams of dietary protein per kilogram of body mass per day, and this did not include the protein supplementation. So if we look at the nutritional composition of the supplements, again, they were isocaloric. Each packet contained around 190 calories. You can see the carbohydrate content differs with a higher carbohydrate content in the carbohydrate control beverage, but no differences between the whey and soy, and no differences in protein content or fat content between the whey and soy supplements. Now if we look at the amino acid composition of whey and soy, we see that particularly for leucine, as well as many of the other branch chain or essential amino acids, a higher amino acid content in the whey versus the soy protein supplement. Looking at changes in their daily dietary nutrient intake over the course of this 9 months. As expected, in the two protein supplement groups, so whey and soy, protein intake increased, daily protein intake increased at 3, 6, and 9 months as compared to baseline. And if we look at protein relative to body mass, so grams per kilo of body mass, we see here that a slightly higher relative protein intake in the two protein groups, again compared to baseline, and this relative protein intake was higher compared to the carbohydrate control group at each time point. Using DEXA, we determined changes in body composition over the course of 9 months of resistance training. So looking at change scores at 3, 6, and 9 months relative to baseline, we see that in both whey and the soy supplement group, significant increase in lean body mass at each time point. We also found a significant increase with carbohydrate supplementation, highlighting the impact of resistance training on gains in lean body mass in our subjects. What we noted was a superior effect of whey protein supplementation on the accumulation of lean body mass measured by DEXA, with effects evident at 3 months and sustained through 9 months of resistance training. We found that supplementation with soy protein or carbohydrate was less effective in promoting gains in lean body mass with resistance training. Interestingly, and we'll talk about this in the next slide, is that the greater gains in lean body mass with whey protein did not translate into greater gains in muscular strength. So overall, the results from this 9-month training study highlight protein quality over protein quantity as an important determinant of the lean body mass response to resistance training. Looking at changes in maximal muscular strength here, for both the back squat as well as bench press. As expected with resistance training, a significant increase in muscular strength for both the upper body as well as the lower body here. So you can see the percent increases here in the three groups at the 9-month time point compared to baseline. And as I mentioned previously, the greater gains in lean body mass with whey protein supplementation, interestingly, did not translate into greater gains in maximal muscular strength. This can be easily explained though. If we think about who our subjects were, they were relatively untrained at baseline. Therefore, the contribution of the numerous neural adaptations that increase muscular strength are not likely to be impacted by whey supplementation. And further, since we utilized a whole body progressive resistance training program, then gains in whole body muscle mass or lean body mass may not necessarily translate to greater strength in a specific movement such as the bench press or the back squat. So another question that investigators have tried to answer recently is how much protein should we eat after exercise? Earlier studies have utilized primarily lower body resistance exercise such as the leg extension and given individuals typically a bolus of 20 to 25 grams of high quality protein when most studies using whey. However, this one study we'll look at now utilized a whole body resistance training routine, and they looked at the muscle protein synthesis response post-exercise and how that differed based upon different amounts of protein that were given post-exercise. So overall, some of the earlier studies support that ingesting 20 to 25 grams of high-quality protein after resistance exercise maximally stimulates muscle protein synthesis. So in this 2016 study, what they did, they had the subjects come in after an overnight fast. They inserted an intravenous cannula for the blood draws. After a standardized breakfast, they infused a phenylalanine tracer that was used to determine protein or amino acid disappearance or uptake by skeletal muscle. They did a blood draw here immediately before the resistance exercise bout, which consisted of 5 exercises, again whole body, formed 4 sets for 10 reps per set at 75% of the previously determined 1 RM. Immediately after exercise ended, they took a muscle biopsy from the vastus lateralis, and then on separate days they had them ingest either 20 grams or 40 grams of whey protein. And then for the next several hours, they took repeated blood draws, as well as a second biopsy at 3 hours post-exercise, and another biopsy, the final biopsy, at 5 hours post-exercise. They calculated what is known as myofibrillar fractional synthesis rate, which is a measure of muscle protein synthesis. And what they found here, highlighted here in the red circles, is that consuming 40 grams of a high-quality protein, such as whey protein, resulted in a greater muscle protein synthesis post-exercise relative to the 20-gram dose. And overall, you see here in this bar graph, if we look at, again, overall fractional synthesis rate over the course of the 5-hour post-exercise time period, a significantly greater muscle protein synthesis response when consuming 40 grams of whey protein versus 20 grams. Now, whether this actually translates to larger gains in muscular strength or lean body mass with resistance training over the long term is not yet known. So you can see the concluding statement from this study. Ingestion of 40 grams of whey protein following whole body resistance exercise stimulates a greater muscle protein synthesis response than 20 grams in young resistance trained men. So the take-home message here regarding dietary protein intake. As we've seen, there remains debate about the protein requirements of athletes. However, most athletes habitually exceed the recommended dietary allowance for protein. Looking at the scientific evidence, there's really no consistent scientific evidence that higher protein intakes are beneficial in terms of athletic performance. What we do know, and what is well established, is that adequate energy intake is much more important than protein intake in terms of maintaining or increasing lean body mass during training. We have to be cautious, though, of very high dietary protein intakes, as they may limit the intake of fats and or carbohydrates, thus compromising the benefits of these important nutrients. And as we just talked about, protein quality, which is really a measure of the essential amino acid composition of the protein. So both protein quality and protein quantity, including timing of ingestion, which we did not talk about in detail, and also concurrent ingestion of other nutrients with protein, including carbohydrates, have been shown to influence the utilization of the ingested dietary proteins.